everyone, and welcome to our webinar today with G2, Cracking the Code, Turning Intent Data into Go-to-Market Success. I'm going to welcome our presenters, Stephen Brierton, the SVP of Sales at ZoomInfo, and our special guest, Robin Ijak-Seng, the VP of Marketing Revenue at G2. Welcome.
Hey, Lauren.
Hey, thank you.
Thanks. So I will introduce the speakers quickly. I know I just said hello to them, but Stephen is the SVP of and Head of Sales at ZoomInfo. He has spent the last 14 years here at ZoomInfo, really helping the company grow from a bootstrap startup to a publicly traded industry leader. As SVP and Head of Sales, he's responsible for the new business sales team and their focus on delivering the value of ZoomInfo to new customers and supporting their revenue growth. Did I miss anything, Stephen? You want to add anything?
No, I think that that sums it up pretty nicely. Thank you.
Great. And then for Robin, Robin is the VP of Revenue Marketing at G2. She is an experienced growth marketing leader and has demonstrated success in a range of B2B SaaS organizations and is highly skilled in demand gen, digital, ABM content, strategy, sales and marketing alignment, and category building. This is going to be a great webinar with these two folks really giving some great insights with their years of experience and their growth in the industry in their respective fields. So let's get started. So to get started, we're gonna launch this first poll. We wanted to get an understanding from everyone in this session today. Is intent a foundational part of your go-to-market strategy? The answers are yes, no, and not sure. So let's see where we are, and we'll get in there. I always feel like we should have music, like some Jeopardy music or something for this part. Give that to On24 as a product feedback. All right, let's see where we are. Great. It looks like over 59% people use intent as part of their go-to-market strategy. We have a good amount that are not sure or no. So I really hope you have your pens and paper ready because you will probably learn a lot of great things in this session. So let's get started. So to set the scene, I really want to get into starting with an icebreaker for both you, Steve and Robin. So what does go-to-market really mean to you? So Robin, let's start with you.
Well, I think, at its core, it really is understanding your audience and your value and having a really clear and focused message around that. And then forming an aligned motion with your organization, sales, marketing to bring that offering to the right people and the right businesses, whether it's like more of a product-led motion or sales-led or whether it's hybrid. But going out there with that clarity and value, I think is really key.
That's great. That's really great. Stephen, what about you? What does go-to-market mean to you?
Yeah, for me, I think the ZoomInfo team, we view go-to-market as a competitive advantage. How companies sell, how they market, when they're getting in front of their prospects and customers. When you look at different businesses, that can be a really compelling motion, and how efficient that motion is, the timeliness of that motion. For speaking on experience, I think we've done a dozen or so acquisitions that I've been a part of, and some of them, at the times were our largest competitors. And what we saw sort of time and time again through those acquisitions is that, ZoomInfo didn't always have the best product or like the most funding or the best engineering team. The advantage and why we were sort of growing so quickly in comparison was, how we went to market. So that has sort of always stuck with me, and I think the focus for me and the rest of the team here at ZoomInfo is how can we make that available for everybody? How can, no matter your size, who you sell to, how can we give you an advantage in your particular market?
That's a great point. That's a really great point. I love that. And I know we talk about modern go-to-market all the time. And I know it's evolved over the past 10 years. One of the things we like to talk about is that at ZoomInfo, we've evolved how go-to-market is. It's from the standard Rolodex that used to be on your desk to having contacts in the cloud that are always up to date. So one of the ways is really based off of that data and signals that you're able to get on a routine basis that sellers can then leverage and marketers can then leverage. So When you start to think about the sophistication of intent specifically used across the go-to-market, what stands out as a key driver for you and your teams when it comes to intent? Stephen, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think there's all sorts of intent today, right? It's becoming a little bit more table stakes. I mean, for all of history, for sellers and marketers, Robin and I and any team that we've been a part of, we've always wanted to talk to the customer that's in market now, or let's get in front of the customer that's in market now. And now you start to see a lot more motions or a lot more data points to help teams sort of prioritize those things. So, yeah, I mean, that's a big component is understanding the when and sort of optimizing that buyer's journey, and really where intent becomes super valuable today versus a spray and pray approach.
Yeah, that's a great point.
I totally agree. I guess from the marketing side, I've really seen the evolution of, the tech stack, MarTech, marketing automation, and we've moved from this, really spray and pray and a lot of other tactics even before that. And with the evolution of tools and the stack and the ability to sort of know who's in market, we've evolved along with that. So now, to your point, Stephen, about table stakes, it really does feel like a huge miss if you're not able to identify who's in market and, run marketing campaigns to that audience and also enable the sales team with those insights. It's really just, it's got to be like more than half the battle at this point to just know who's in market at any given time. And I think we all know that stat where it's maybe 5%. We've seen that from, I think, the LinkedIn, the famous LinkedIn stat. So if you're not understanding that and marketing to that audience, then it's a huge miss.
Yeah, there's a bunch of those now, right? Like you mentioned that stat. I think the proliferation of the volume of information that's available now, that buyers can go out and find and consume on their own. So you think about those two things, and again, depending on where you go or which stat you prefer, but there's somewhere around 2/3 of that buyer's journey before they start interacting with your marketing content or hitting your website or talking to a seller. And then on the flip side, if you are aware of that and when they're in market and you can be the first one to the table, that's really when you start to see the fruits of that labor. And again, the stats show that sort of win rate jumps around 75%. You can increase it if you can get there first. So it is really about setting that buying vision and being timely.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And I think, Robin, I want to dive a little deeper into what you're saying about the different types of intent. And I know that there's various levels of intent. We talk about first party intent, which is usually anonymous visitors to your website. You could collect it and get that information of people who are on your site itself. There's second party intent, which is we have a great partnership with G2. And that's one of the key elements that we talk about when we talk about the different types of intent to leverage across go-to-market. And then there's that third party intent, which is usually the standard type of derived intent, where it's getting signals of people that are doing research on the wider web, being able to identify that they are looking for different types of information and really collecting that as their research gathers and then gets stronger. That's the other type of intent, which Stephen was hitting on. That's really when the when happens. So when it comes to marketing, Robin, what do you feel like intent plays the best role in top of funnel strategies versus what plays the best role in bottom funnel strategies?
I think it really depends. All the data that you can collect from your own web properties, what you're calling first party intent, is super important. Do that, have a website that's, driving conversion and that you can track these visits, both anonymous and known, have landing pages, do those things. Third party, which is, signals from around the internet, is also really important as top of the funnel stuff to capture, but understand that it's pretty top of the funnel and it can get pretty noisy. So you might not want to funnel all of that into your campaigns and over to sales. That could be kind of like a nightmare. But, G2 is an example of second party intent data where, we always joke around, no one comes to G2 for fun. We have over 90 million site visits per year now, which is insane to me, but it's because of our incredible SEO. And so folks are researching software solutions on the internet, and more often than not, they'll land on a G2 category page and start researching the solutions that are listed under that category. And that is what makes up G2 buyer intent. So if you're able to, if you're already, many people on this call might be leveraging G2 buyer intent, many aren't, but that's what it is. It's our ability to kind of show our customers who's looking at their product on G2, who's looking at their category, and who's comparing to their competitors on G2. So it's much more, I'd say, middle to bottom funnel intent, because folks are on G2 actually doing research that they're looking for a solution like yours. So then you can use these incredible integrations with like ZoomInfo and other tools G2 integrates with to power your campaigns, to inform sales, to build a lead scoring model. So there's just so much like cool and rich stuff you can do. And it's super important in being able to bring these people into your funnel in kind of a more meaningful way that'll actually drive some efficiency and conversion.
Yeah, those are really great points. I love that. I think you need a shirt that says like no one goes to G2 for fun. So that's a hilarious point. So Stephen, when it comes to the different types of funnel intent that your teams are seeing, do you feel like the more of that mid funnel, bottom funnel is stronger from what Robin's saying, or are you guys focused on the top of funnel stuff? This is when people are really starting to just do their research, and they're really just ramping up into that research stage. So as you were saying before, like first seat at the table is really important. So do you find that the top of funnel intent is best for the sellers?
Yeah, I think there are varying degrees, right? Like you can't ignore the entirety of the funnel. It's all important, right? If you're focusing so much on the bottom of the funnel, then you're probably not driving enough traffic up funnel. And then you're just going to, in a month from now, or depending on how long your sales cycle is, you're going to be in a dearth of opportunities. And so I want to qualify the answer is in how, if we use sort of our experience here at ZoomInfo and how we structure the team, I think you have different roles with different responsibilities that are focusing on different intent signals. So at the top of the funnel, like Robin mentioned, you might have that engagement where you can see they're consuming content related to your offering around the web. Right, where they're interacting with content, they're reading reviews, they're downloading white papers, they're engaging with ads. That type of stuff, very much top of funnel. It's probably, to Robin's point, not yet ready to pass over to sales. You're gonna get that constant sales and marketing frustration of marketing said this was a hot lead and they're nowhere near ready, right? And so at that point, you're probably better off serving, more ads specific to your brand. Try to drive them to your landing pages, to your website. There is probably general messaging either coming from your marketing automation team, whether it's emails that's just more brand awareness, or from your sales development reps. Again, maybe not yet asking for a meeting, just things around, hey, Lauren, we've been helping customers, with office furniture in their offices. And here's an interesting design that we did, right? Like just something very general, top of funnel, and that can help you drive leads later on. And then as you think about when you start to get sellers involved and when they should really be picking up the phone, it's more along when you see them maybe hitting the website, interacting with your web properties. Maybe the research now is consistent, and you're seeing that intent spike week over week over week, and this thing hasn't died down. That's starting to be like where there's smoke. There might be that fire there. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point. So along the same vein, what is one area of optimization that you'd say most companies miss out on? I know we just hit on it a little bit, but are there any areas where you feel like intent, they're using intent across their sales and marketing strategy that could really be optimized? I know we were just talking about full funnel intent, but are there any things that you feel are kind of an area of optimization for people on the phone, especially the ones that are using intent within their strategies today?
Yeah,
Rachel, let's start with you.
I think you
for
see it
Robin?
a lot in like the Q&A. Like, how do I get this to my sales team? When should we act
Yeah.
on it? I think that's like the biggest area of optimization. And you look, the ability to do so is far easier if you happen to be a ZoomInfo customer, and if you're a
Mhm.
G2 customer. We have those alerts, what we call workflows, and those integrations, so that as soon as signal takes place, you can action on it. You can run a motion, and right, those signals are different and deserve to be treated differently. So as we talked about, if you see engagement across the web, that might trigger a
Mhm.
motion for Robin and the marketing team to start doing display ads,
Mhm.
versus if you see them hitting your pricing page or reviewing your products page, or some of those things. There's a new leader that just came on into the organization, right? That's a sign of intent as well. They
Mhm.
just hired this person. They probably hired them for a reason. Like, you don't go to G2 for fun. They probably just didn't hire this leader for fun and just to say they have the position. There's probably some underlying initiatives. So when you see those type of intent signals, that first party or that new leader coming in, that's when you want to trigger probably a motion to get it in the hands of your sellers, so that, hey, this interesting thing just took place. Add it to your call list, and drop it into a sequence. I think that is the
Mhm.
biggest area of probably of optimization, and where intent can fall flat. You might see the signal, but then not action on it.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree. It's important to get it into the places where people are actually working and connecting with things. And I think as marketers, we've often kind of made a lot of assumptions and struggled with, like, oh, we'll, include this widget in Salesforce. And then all the sales folks are going to like learn about Marketo sales insights and really adopt it. And it's like, nope, that never happens in real life. But if they're already working in tools like ZoomInfo or, Slack, I'm seeing some questions here. I think one from Michael about SDRs that are gold. Like, one thing that we do at G2, and we actually have a whole webinar on this, we can drop the link later, but we have inbound SDRs who are gold on setting meetings from like inbound demo requests and things like that. But then we have an outbound team, more of BDRs, who are aligned with like sales pods, and they're using G2 buyer intent in Slack and in ZoomInfo to kind of prioritize accounts and go after with more meaningful messaging. In the case of G2 buyer intent, we can see who's on G2 just looking at the category. So maybe that is a signal, like, let's go with like more of an educational moment of like, here's where G2 fits into your marketing strategy or whatever it is, a lighter touch. But if they're actually on G2 comparing you to your competitors, maybe then it's a whole different message where you talk about why us over them or your value. So we sort of map the G2 buyer intent signal, whether it's a category view or a competitive view or looking at your page or your pricing page, with our outreach. But that's how we really help the BDR team and anyone doing outbound to prioritize accounts and map a really clear message with that intent signal. So that's just one example, but that's kind of how we're doing it here.
Yeah, it's one of the like hidden points in there, I think, that you touched on, is like treating things differently inbound versus outbound, and how
Mhm.
how your BDR team, your SDR team, your ISR, whatever they're called in your organization, how they're structured. I think you look back in history of our sales team as an example, and one of the mistakes we made is, as we started to scale the SDR team, they were doing two things that are very different: right brain, left brain. We were tasking them with going out and bringing customers into the funnel and prospects into the funnel to book those discovery calls, like Mike asked. And then we were also saying, also respond to these inbound leads. And those are like two very different things. Inbounds, you need speed to lead. If you don't convert
Mhm.
within the first 5 minutes, your chances drop off a cliff. The stats are astounding there. So
Right.
having those inbound moments when they filled out a form, right, or maybe when they abandoned your form, or they downloaded that piece of content from your site, that's when you want to get that in the hands of your SDR team, your inbound team, right away, so that they can book the meeting while it's top of mind to them, and then get it to your account executives or whatever. Versus some of maybe top of funnel, doing the research. This is where your team is going outbound. They're being strategic. They're sort of watching the signals take place, and then looking to book the discovery calls that way.
Yeah, that's a great point. I know there's a lot of questions that are pretty relevant, and we've touched on most of them, but there is one in here that I was thinking would be a good one to answer my previous question about optimization of using intent. But do you prospect based on intent signal or reach out with general discussion? I know that there's a lot of conversations, like I'm in product marketing, so I answer a lot of questions about intent in general, day to day. But a lot of them are people saying like, well, my customer reached out saying that they spiked on this and it didn't really work. So like, to me, that's one of the areas of optimization. Like, we're tracking these signals and trying to understand that people are starting to research, but there's a fine line of saying like, I saw you looking at this type of thing and kind of coming off in a creepy way versus like, hey, I'd like to have a conversation and insert pain point here. I definitely think like intent is a tool to leverage and have a better tailored conversation, but saying like, hey, I saw you spiking on this type of topic is definitely an area of optimization I've seen.
That is like the big sort of sales no-no. Right. I think I saw in the chat as well. Like, how do you do that without seeming creepy? I think the way that we sort of coach and talk about it is, look, you, in whatever you sell, you are the industry experts there, right? That is your domain. And so using customer voice, especially if you have all of the other data from a system like ZoomInfo, where you can see, okay, this company did the spike, they're in this industry, they're of this size, right? They're in this geographic location, whatever those signals might be. It's this sort of persona that we like to sell to. Then you can come into that when they are, maybe top of funnel doing the research and just say, hey, Lauren, I saw this interesting study that our product marketing team just pushed out where we were helping a customer in insert industry. And there's some really interesting points that this VP of whatever saw. I thought it might be useful and relevant for you. And that's it, right? Like, now it's just like, oh, that was timely. That's really helpful versus, hey, Lauren, I know you've been researching this like the last top of mind, and are you ready to buy now? So,
yeah. And I think another thing is to align with like Robin's team and the marketing team as well. And I wonder if you have any feedback, Robin, because alignment on the intent topics that the sellers are seeing people spike on, and also what marketers are pushing out, I think is really where that the key to really driving that go-to-market momentum can come in, because then they can have tailored emails, conversations, etc. But I was wondering if you have any advice, Robin.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I wholeheartedly agree with Stephen. And I love that example of like, hey, this is just harmless, good content that it seems might be relevant to you at this time. I think that's the type of outreach I prefer. And I'm sure we're all inundated, every day in our inboxes, on LinkedIn, on my cell phone. So I do prefer those types of touch points, and it's like, great, I'll chew on this, and when I'm ready, I certainly know when it's the motion of requesting a demo and getting into your sales funnel. So I really like that approach. For us, we're also really drinking our own Kool-Aid and using our own buyer intent, and we'll do things like launch display campaigns with different integrations, like we integrate with Rollworks and Demandbase and different platforms where you can start to serve display ads and retarget the people that are on G2. But then we also try to be pretty intentional about, okay, they're looking at the category. Maybe we serve ads that are very educational and check this thing out, or here's a video. There's no form involved. We don't, run display campaigns expecting that someone's going to click an ad on CNN and, fill out a form in some sort of joyless experience. So we're very careful about bringing people back to pages where they can learn more. There's no form fill, even giveaway content ungated. But then if it's like comparisons, or they're really spending time looking at the G2 product page, or insert any company, if I'm on the Asana marketing team and my competitors are Wrike and Trello and Airtable and Monday, I'm in a very crowded category, right? So it's important for me as a marketer on the Asana team to retarget and tell the story of maybe why Asana, what we can solve for you based on your persona and things like that. So I feel like great marketing teams do that really well. They take the G2 buyer intent signals and they map content and offers based on what is alongside where people are in their journey, really. And it creates just a more enjoyable journey with your brand. It's more of a virtuous, I'd say, cycle of engagement. And we just don't view it as that transactional, like, oh, they looked and now tomorrow they fill out a form, they're in your funnel, sales is on top of it. It's a longer game than that. And that's how we treat it with our campaigns.
Yeah, that's a great point. There's a question in here that I'm seeing about that the team uses intent and they're starting to use websites, which is a ZoomInfo product where you're able to track people that are going to different pages on your website. And they talked about like marrying those two together. And that's really like it kind of goes into what you were saying is about if you're doing campaigns with display ads from intent and you're starting to see the same company come back to your website, you can then, if you have like our marketing product within ZoomInfo, you're able to actually build audiences, maybe do a retargeting campaign and have a slightly different message from your original message and drive to maybe different content as well. So it's definitely that journey that we're trying to build that's more educated in what they're looking into and what you're looking to have them drive to. But I think that's a great point that you were saying about the campaign.
It also kicks off those different motions, right? Like how and when maybe do we get this to the sales team? So you see the intent across the broader web. You've got Robin's team running, different ad campaigns, or maybe we start to soften them up via some email with the general messaging, and then we see them hit the website. And then using a thing like workflows, that's where, okay, hey, this account is owned by Steven, who's the sales rep. We can alert him via Slack. We can send him an email to say, your target account just visited the pricing page. And here's, the buyer personas that you care about. And so now, and you start to run that motion, full cycle. And that's really where you get the sales and marketing alignments. We call it air cover here, where like, hey, I'm seeing this, I'm a seller that I'm working this particular account, but I would love some additional support from my marketing team to, see if we can drive, more groundswell and hit them with a different email campaign or messaging or ad campaigns.
Yeah. And to take that even just a little step further, that's also where we could go and do like a more middle funnel campaign and take G2 intent and marry that with the previous one as well. And you can then keep that path moving forward too.
Yep.
Great. So shifting gears a little bit, we just walked through about how sales and marketing should look at intent overall and different ways that they can leverage it. But aside from marketing strategies, we often see expansion of a TAM as an intent use case. So let's dig into that a little bit. So have you experienced using intent to build out your TAM analysis, Steve?
Yes. Short answer is yes. I think like in the last year, 2 years, the world changed a lot and it changed pretty rapidly. And so we started to think about what our best fit customers look like differently, and then how we can go and support them. I think there's also, not just from a new customer acquisition standpoint, a big focus, today, if you read, financial standings and companies' growth and valuation, what they're focused on and margins of profitability, there's a big use case on your existing customer base as well. So understanding, hey, this customer might meet our top ideal persona and they fit everything else. But if all of a sudden we start seeing them research these secondary topics, right? Maybe it's a second line of offering that we have, but they're not using it today. Maybe it represents sort of a risk that can be used to identify like, hey, this is a cohort of our customers that might be at risk. We should think about treating them differently, even though firmographically they look like the perfect customer. They're never going to leave us, right? Like that's a way to use intent in your customer base to prioritize your TAM differently. I think alternatively, you can use it internationally to generate and open new markets. There's a bunch of different ways. I think the beauty of it is that it's dynamic signals. So like it's changing and you're gathering insight as the market changes. And so that's where it becomes really useful, maybe to update what your ICP looks like based on market trends and say, hey, yeah, this has been performing really well, but maybe we should move into this market because all of a sudden in this industry, we're seeing a lot more, interaction with this content, or we're seeing a lot more new leaders come into this organization and digitize whatever. Or so I think that's a big one for sure.
Yeah. Robin, have you evolved your campaign strategies leveraging intent and built your TAM analysis from there?
Yeah, especially actually in previous roles before I joined G2, we used G2 buyer intent a lot for that use case because, what we all don't know is a lot. And if you have data, from a source like, especially like G2, where we just have mountains and mountains of data on products across tens of thousands of categories, it can be really powerful to know, gosh, I made all these assumptions about my ICP and my TAM. And then I realized by, logging into my G2 account and looking at all the visits and all the comparisons that there's a whole world of people and companies and industries that I maybe didn't know about. And it can really help inform your messaging and your strategy going forward, or at least give you a place to start experimenting. Like, let's test this market that we didn't think about. And I guess because I'm at G2 and I do get to talk to so many of our prospects and customers, and basically everyone, pretty much everyone in the world with a software product has it listed on G2. And it can be like a very early startup. It can be a mid-market company. It can be an established enterprise. But when you log into G2 and you look at the visits, and now you can even use G2's market intelligence to show you churn trends and who's leaving my product and adopting this one. I think there's just so much data and information you can use to inform that go-to-market strategy, and maybe tell you things you didn't know about your TAM and help you start experimenting with new markets. So I think it's really, really important to use that data.
Yeah, that's great. And I think it's one area I just want to shine a little bit of a light on G2 and ZoomInfo's partnership. I know recently we actually just launched a new integration. We had our intent integration, but now we actually have actionable contacts that can even take it another step forward and not only help you build a TAM analysis around a type of company that you're looking for, but you can also get information on the contacts, like who are you engaging with, who's buying. So I think
I am I'll just say I'm so excited about this announcement and this integration, because it essentially is a free trial of ZoomInfo that you can access through G2. So, you don't have to have a ZoomInfo license. You can turn on the integration in G2 and start seeing recommended contacts at these accounts that are showing intent that you'd want to reach out to. And you can think each user can get 50 free contacts a month from ZoomInfo. So that's pretty huge and pretty valuable for you to start, even if you're not doing this yet, or you feel like, oh, I'm really behind the 8 ball on being able to do some of this stuff. This is it. This is a way that you can get started in testing these audiences. So I think it's super, super exciting.
Definitely. I know we've had a lot of content already, and there's a lot of really great questions. So I'm going to talk through one final closing. So if you have, if people that are on this webinar today are to walk away with one thing when it comes to their intent strategies, what would you say that one thing should be that they should start to implement today, tomorrow, this week, sometime? Robin, I'll start with you.
Oh, okay. I'd say, don't wait for perfect. I think sometimes we really over-engineer stuff. And it's especially in the case of G2 and other amazing tools like ZoomInfo, it's if you have access to the intent data, start thinking about ways you can use it in campaigns or surfacing these insights for sales, even if it's a simple, I'm going to download the CSV of accounts and start having conversations with sales. It doesn't have to be super fancy and complex and things like that. And then if you're already using tools like ZoomInfo, which I think so many of our, our customers together are, then just turn on the integration, start pushing the signals into ZoomInfo and start trying it, and get maybe an early adopter on, the sales team that loves to get their hands on these tools to start using it and talking about it internally. And I think that can be one of the most powerful moves you can make.
I love that.
Yeah. If I have to go, I would say there's different use cases for intent. I also would say intent isn't a crystal ball. It's a great tool, and it helps you at top of funnel, mid funnel, bottom funnel, all the way throughout. But there is maybe a misconception that, hey, they spiked, they didn't buy, this doesn't work, it wasn't a real signal. I think you have to understand where they are in that buyer's journey, and then sort of work alongside them, whether that's through marketing and sales alignment. And then at the end of the day, you're still always going to need to be in front of the right person at that organization. So having a good account, having intent, and understanding what they might be doing. Again, it can all fall apart if you don't know who the key players are and how to get a hold of them, and have a motion where you're in front of them, in testing the motion and seeing, to Robin's point, are we improving? Let's just make sure every day that we run this motion that we're improving, and we're not trying to be perfect out of the gate. So those are hopefully a couple of simple things right away to help out if intent is new to you.
I love that. I know experimentation is one of the best ways to find out what's working for you and your teams. I did a recent customer product feedback session with someone, and they were saying that they used to have, so if you're familiar with ZoomInfo intent, there's signal strengths that you can have. And if you have a high signal strength, it means that they've done more research essentially when on the web. But this person was actually saying that she has actually gone towards the lower signal strength, because that's really people that are just starting to get that research. And she found more success getting in the door first with the lower strength ones, because they're just starting that research and they haven't spiked as much, versus higher ones. So she said that was something that worked really well for her. So she was doing a lot of experimentation, and I think you both hit the nail on the head with that one.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is a big piece of it, right? Not to make it a ZoomInfo G2 product pitch entirely. Yeah. Maybe we should have done that, but that's where having workflow set up, that's where having different campaigns where you can A/B test things, testing low scores, testing high scores, set up a workflow to do display ads when they're here, or set up workflow to send an email campaign and cadence with this type of messaging here. When do we get the sales team involved and alert them via Slack, drop them in call lists, throw it into Engage, right? All of those motions can be automated. And that's where I think Robin nailed it, trying to be perfect across all of them. You're going to set yourself up for failure. So, set them up, test, and then keep measure the results, and then keep altering and iterating upon that.
Yeah, that's great. We have a lot of questions, so buckle up. There's a great question in here about how does ZoomInfo gather intent data? There's a bunch of ways that ZoomInfo gathers intent. Like I was saying, the first party intent is based off of our website's platform. It's a pixel that you put in your website, and you're able to track people that come onto the site. That's one of the ways. We also leverage our DSP to get the third party intent, along with some of our partnerships like G2. There's a continuum of ways that ZoomInfo gathers intent. There's a few blogs out there. We'll look to get that to you in a follow-up as well. But there's more than one flavor of intent within ZoomInfo. So it's gathered a variety of ways. There's a great question here from Teresa. How do you get this data to your sales team in a way that can quickly digest and act on it? Robin, you gave an example about exporting, but Steve, is there anything that you would want to add on how to get intent quickly to your team?
Yeah, there's a number of ways. So depending on where they live, we can deliver it via Slack, so they can get that Slack alert. As I mentioned, you can marry your first party data. So things like, if you're a Salesforce user as an example, and this account is owned by them, when that interesting moment takes place, the ZoomInfo platform can say, okay, that moment just happened. It's owned by, Lauren, kick her out of Slack alerts. You can do it via email as well, and an email alert. We have, to your point, there's different types of intent. So tracker, when champions move and people get hired and people get promoted, again, a great sign of intent. Somebody that bought from you in the past, moved to a new company. You always want to talk to those people, right? So being able to get alerted to those, we can push and sequence things into different marketing automation platforms, into different sales outreach tools, whether it's our Engage solution or whether it's tools like Outreach and SalesLoft. There's a myriad of ways. And again, to Robin's point, one of the biggest things that you want to make sure is you get that data where your sellers are living and where your marketing team is living, so that they actually put it into use versus just a great idea that is falling on deaf ears because no one is seeing it.
Yeah, same. We push a lot of it into Slack. We have our BDRs in Slack, so we're getting intent signals in real time. And that's where most people are working. The sales team is also on ZoomInfo Sales OS, so we can push the intent there. But it is sort of a matter of figuring out where people are working and how you can operationalize and scale it. So we push it into Marketo, we push it into other systems where we're enhancing our lead scoring. It goes into Salesforce at the account level. So there's all kinds of things you can do with these powerful integrations to enable people and launch campaigns and kind of do your best work.
Yeah, there was a question, you mentioned campaigns in there. Yes, we can also push it into Salesforce campaigns. So go ahead, moment takes place, we can grab the buying committee, the personas that you care about, and then automatically push them into Salesforce and into a particular campaign. So not only can marketing teams start emailing that, but sales teams can see who were added into the campaign. And again, if they wanted to start calling down, they could. That's where you can start to see what works, when do the touch points work, how often should we be touching them, and by which means.
Yeah, that's great. There's a question in here about leveraging intent across marketing SDRs and executives. It says, do you think it's useful for them? And I think overall, yes. That's that's a lot of what we've talked about today in general about the usefulness of it across those teams. Is there anything that you would want to hit on in terms of leveraging different types of intent maybe across the marketing teams or SDRs, or do you think alignment across what the intent signals is important? I'll just spin that question a little bit.
Yeah, alignment certainly matters. I also think that, like we talked about, depending on the signal, you probably treat it differently. So new person coming into an organization, that probably warrants well, at least in our world, it does. We like to pick up the phone and talk to the individual, welcome them to the organization, and just, sort of give them general brand awareness. And so we'll either do that by phone or email, right? I think hitting a pricing page is something you should absolutely be on the phone and talking to. That is a high level intent signal. Same thing like Robin talked about, they're on G2 and they're comparing your services to another alternative. That's a very high level intent. And you definitely want to be in front of those sort of very low, mid bottom funnel content. So yeah, super valuable for SDR teams to be integrating into touching there.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's also, it can take a village, especially when you're a company that's looking at like an ABM, like a tiered account model of these are our tier 1 top accounts. At the executive level, you don't want to get too into the weeds with talking about all this like influence and source and all this. You can just see people's eyes roll back in their head, and nobody really has appetite for like a marketing team. I joke about this, that's high-fiving themselves on generating all this pipeline that doesn't turn into revenue. So I really feel like it's important to show where intent has helped you move the needle as it impacts revenue. This is more from a marketing perspective, and be able to tell that story. Like, we have a tier 1 account with this many contacts at that account that have showed engagement here, there. And this is where we leveraged intent to get them, ultimately to be an engaged account, take a meeting and into revenue. So kind of like adjusting the stories for your audience, I think matters when it comes to things like this. And also for, as we already covered, like just how BDRs, SDRs, marketing teams can action, scale, operationalize intent is so important. And ZoomInfo has tons of integrations. We have tons of integrations. There's just a lot you can do to help turn intent signals into meetings and pipeline that actually converts to revenue.
Yeah, that's a great point. There's a great question here about the difference of ZoomInfo intent and G2. I think we covered it a little bit. Like we were just talking about, ZoomInfo has multiple ways to have intent, and G2 is one of them. You can actually filter by G2 intent top, or you can filter by G2 within ZoomInfo, which is really exciting. But I think the general difference is ZoomInfo, there's a broad variety of intent, and then G2 is intent based off of people that are visiting the G2 pages themselves. Is that right, Robin?
Yeah, that's accurate. G2 really is sourcing buyer intent from people coming to the category pages, researching software. So it really is just views of your page on G2, views of the category, and comparisons of you against your competitors, which for me as a demand gen marketer is pretty much like more than half the battle.
I love that. I love that. Steve, I think this question will be for you, but with your history of ZoomInfo, how much outbound improvement did you see once you started leveraging intent within your strategies, especially around SDRs, BDRs?
Yeah, we've seen a lot. To the point where now, if you look at how much of our monthly revenue is derived from inbound versus outbound, it's a 50-50 split roughly. I think if you look at, more importantly, what our customers, we actually just did our most recent impact survey. And on average, we're seeing our customers booking about 75% more demos with their prospects by starting to leverage some of this stuff. I think it also plays into Robin's world in marketing source pipeline, and most importantly, pipeline that converts. But on average, in the latest survey, marketing teams are increasing their pipeline by 1.5x. And those two things are resulting in an average revenue growth of around 30 to 33%, sort of based on this past years of data, which, is, I think, really solid results considering you talk to a lot of marketers and sellers that 23 has been a hard year all across the board. So it really does help. I think what it gets down to is the prioritization. That's where it becomes really valuable. Whether Robin talked about, like, if you have tier 1 accounts, tier 2 accounts, we talked earlier about your target addressable market and how intent may sort of shift that focus. It is really in a world where you have, most likely, we all do, limited resources, limited headcount, limited spend. Where can I go and prioritize those resources, that headcount, that spend, to drive the most return? And that's where, the intent and the measurement and the iteration really becomes helpful for you.
Yeah, that's great. We are making it through these questions in great time. So I have a great question that has come in. Could you explain a successful example of combining intent with an ABM strategy? Rachel, this one's for you.
Oh, me? Yeah. I thought you said Rachel, but you meant me, I guess, right?
Robin, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Totally
Rachel asked the
okay.
question. I'm so sorry, Robin.
Totally,
yes, Robin. No. I'm so sorry.
Totally okay. No problem. Yeah. So, I think a lot of people, they're like, this is all great, but it's like account level information. What am I supposed to do with all this like account level information? I need to know like exactly who to reach out to. And I mean, that's kind of what the trick is of ABM, right? That maybe let's say Shopify is like a tier 1 account for you, but Shopify is made up of a bunch of different humans that have different roles within Shopify. But if you know, and again, this is going to be a kind of a G2 centric answer, if you know that folks from Shopify are on G2 and they're comparing certain solutions, maybe it's like a project management solution, maybe it's like an IT solution, there's ways that you can tailor the message, and use things like the new ZoomInfo integration. So if you're logged into your G2, intent, if you log into my G2 and you can see your intent data, and you can say, oh my gosh, like Shopify is all over our G2 page. They're comparing us with our competitors. This is so awesome. We have to go after them right now. Now you can see, these are the recommended contacts in IT at Shopify, or in HR at Shopify, or in marketing at Shopify. And you can align accordingly. You can turn on integrations to make that should be always on and running to retarget these right people at accounts that are looking at you at G2. So I feel like even though there's, a real appetite to be like, who is it at Shopify that's on there? It's like, it's your job as like great sales and marketers to kind of retarget and understand these intent signals and how to turn them into contact level data. You can then retarget, if your persona is IT, the IT team at Shopify, get in front of them with like valuable content and nice experiences, and understand that it's not that transactional, but have a plan to maybe eventually, more middle of the funnel, target them with like content that's downloadable and things where you are starting to capture contact information through that type of content marketing journey, and finally get them ready to pass over to sales. When you're going after accounts like Shopify, it's not going to happen overnight. It's maybe going to happen over a quarter, 2 quarters, where you're engaging different people at the account with the right offers, the right content, and then ready for sales. And that's where it all really starts to make a difference.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And it's a great simple way to think about how to kind of that top of funnel, like you were saying, middle funnel, bottom funnel, and that journey overall. I think intent can play a role in the various sections of it overall. So last question as we wrap up, and this is for both of you. How can we effectively implement and integrate intent data into our existing sales and marketing strategies without disrupting our current processes to test it out? I know we talked about a few ways, but is there anything that we could do, maybe find a champion like you had mentioned, or is there anything else you would suggest just to try and get intent tested in their strategies before they switch up current processes?
I think it's certainly additive. So you don't have to just sort of completely alter how you go to market just because now you're using intents. You take, what has been working for you and you continue to use that. And then you start to layer in those additional either touches or campaigns or sort of different sequence of events. So it can be something as simple as, hey, as soon as we see them hit our pricing page, then we're going to do this. We're going to alert the SDR team, or we're going to alert the owner, the account owner, or whatever it might be on how your team is structured across SDRs, AEs, AMs, and marketing. And we're gonna put that call in right away, and we make sure that they start to do that. It might be just something as simple as the retargeting that Robin and Lauren talked about. Is, hey, all of a sudden, we saw them visit our page and they didn't necessarily convert. They're one of the 98% of people that didn't fill out the form or interact with the content. And so all of a sudden they left, and then, we see them hit G2 maybe. Okay, that's retarget. Let's now, we saw those two things take place. So I think that's where, again, you can just start to add these things in. And then what you'll end up finding, hopefully, measuring everything, is that it's working. You're seeing increased engagements, and now that becomes sort of the new routine, and that is one of the emotions that become a part of your standard playbook. And now you're looking for, okay, how do we optimize this motion, or where do we go find that next one?
That's great. Anything to add, Robin? I think we covered most of it.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Just understand the level of intent and do your best at, you know. And also, I mean, from the marketing side, we are so data driven and sort of scientific these days, which is awesome. But the other side is really the art. Like, what is the creative? What is the offer? What is the messaging to keep people coming back, and knowing that folks are in market and they're looking at your solution, or they're comparing you, or they're trying to figure out, is really more than half the battle. I keep saying that, but then mapping that with like some of your truly your best work, your best creative, your best offers, understanding that it's a journey before they become sales ready. They're doing most of the research on their own. And it should mean that you might be, you know, the trade-off is quantity. Maybe you're not passing a ton over to sales, but what you are routing should be high quality folks that are really interested and ready to buy.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Well, thank you everyone that has joined. As a reminder, the recording for this will be sent out in the next 24 to 48 hours. We really look forward to engaging with you guys in future webinars. It seems like there's a lot of appetite to dig even a little bit further in some of these strategies. So we might be back together, the three of us, next year in 2024. So excited that everyone enjoyed it. There's a lot of great questions, a lot of great engagement, and we appreciate you being here.